Ooh, this is exotic. Muscle Cat Media. Nice. Cultural.
Weekend Pickoff time on the Baseball Expats. It's Rolsey and Spoon. No Eric, as seems to be customary for this show now. He's in a bush. I don't know what that means. Spoon reckons it's provocative, and I guess we'll just go with the literal meaning of Eric is in a bush. But the weekend is around the corner, which means plenty of baseball sitting on the couch. Spoon, my friend, how are you?
I'm very well, mate. I'm looking forward to a weekend at home with the sport. I seem to have picked a great weekend last weekend to miss some very exciting AFL, NRL, and Major League Baseball. I'm sure being parked up on the couch this weekend, all the games will be awful viewing because that seems to be how it goes.
I mean, it's at what time of recording? 4:06 p.m. Friday afternoon Sydney time, and I'm still hungover from the eighth wonder of the world, Leichhardt Oval, on a Thursday night. There is no better place to watch a sporting event than Leichhardt Oval, but why, God, why do the schedule makers need to give us a Thursday night game?
Are you tempted by the 21-1 about the West Tigers to win the flag, or are we not there yet? Okay.
It's funny because a buddy of mine, we're talking about this before the season started, and I think he ended up getting the bet on, which is it was West Tigers top 8 and Sydney Swans top 4. And he was getting a pretty good price about it. I can't remember exactly what he got, but it may have sort of touched double figures. You may have gotten about $10 for that bet. And right now it's looking pretty good with the Tigers sitting second on the live ladder and the Swans at the top of the AFL. So, for anybody who's holding a ticket like that, it could be a fun winter here in Australia.
Yeah, Swans were $5.50 about the top 4 at one point preseason. So, yeah, anything. I don't know what the Tigs would have been for the 8 preseason. I'm seeing they're $1.40 now. How about $3.10 about a top 4 finish? Can I dangle that carrot for you yet, or
look, there's plenty of baseball fan bases that would feel the same way. As a long struggling West Tigers fan, it just still doesn't feel like any of this is happening. Like, they're exciting to watch. They're playing good defense. They're scoring loads of points. This was always going to happen when they were good, right? Like, there were going to be crazy crowds. Like, Leichhardt is great no matter what. Like, it's always a sellout at Leichhardt because it's the eighth wonder of the world. It's an amazing place to watch sport. But there's still, even last night, man, like, they were up 12 with, 15 minutes to play. And I think maybe a penalty allowed the Raiders to get sort of down the field and maybe at the halfway moment. And you could just kind of feel the air sucked out of the entire stadium. It's like we've been on top the entire game, except for the 10 minutes where Appy Corso was in the sin bin. And there was still just this hush across the crowd. It was like, okay, this is going to be the turning point. This is where it happens. So I think there's just a lot of cautious optimism still around Tigers fans. That's certainly the way that I'm summing it up anyways.
Yeah, there was nearly that miracle try, right, where like he just kind of bounced the put down and couldn't rotate the ball, but that would have made it a 6-point game with 10 minutes to go. And I think, definitely would have been holding your breath there.
It's look, it was a fun night, and look, if anybody's ever close to Leichhardt Oval and has a chance to go, I would highly recommend it. It is one of these sporting experiences of a lifetime. My brother actually came a couple years ago and happened to be in town for one day. He was here on business. He was in Sydney for one day, and it just so happened to be a day that the Tigers were playing on a Saturday afternoon in Leichhardt. It's a guy that's been to Super Bowls. He's been to World Cup games. He's been to World Series, and he reckons that a Saturday afternoon, Sharks versus Tigers in the middle of the NRL season, was one of his top 5 sporting experiences. So maybe that tells you everything you need to know. We need to get you down for a Leichhardt game. Unfortunately, whenever you were in Sydney a few weeks ago, you were so close to it. You almost could have thrown a rock and hit the eighth wonder of the world, but we had other business to attend to that night.
Does that make the Red Lion the 9th wonder of the world?
Well, it is. When they win, it is. It's just it's hard to get a drink when they win. Look, there's plenty of baseball to talk about this weekend. I did just want to touch on anybody who listened to the episode on Monday or Tuesday it was. We put together that theme team for players whose surnames started with A to I, and Spoon's going to. You haven't told us which team we're going to do next week, whether it's going to be the final third of the alphabet or the middle third of the alphabet. I know you've been scratching your head thinking about it all week, but I did just want to follow that up because I said I'd run it through the algorithm to basically see what type of team that could be, and it ran a few different models, but it basically spat anything out from about a 97 win team to a 105 win team. And oddly enough, a lot of the variation was based on Drake Baldwin because there just wasn't enough detail to basically predict what he was going to do this year, which led me down a Drake Baldwin rabbit hole. Have you looked at his statistics to start the year? He's been incredible.
He's batting 350 or something, isn't he?
He leads the league in hits, leads the league in runs. He's played in every single game that the Braves have played. He's already like halfway to his home run total of 125 games last year. Like, he's been incredible.
Yeah. I think, is it Sean Murphy? He's been on the IL for a while, so that's like really opened up his opportunities. I mean, you look back on the Braves, like the last couple of years, they've really been like platoon kind of catcher guys. And then who was it? They traded someone to the Angels 2 or 3 years ago to create the path for Baldwin to at least get 50% game time. And now he's kind of, I mean, he's really earning. Not that a catcher can be an everyday player, but he's earned almost the right to be the number one guy. And they do have a couple of the guys in that lineup that they like to rotate through the DH spot as well. So it's going to be interesting what that means for Sean Murphy in the future. But just on the Braves as well, $1.50 now to win the division. They, partly because they're brilliant at 17-8, but also partly because they're betting rivals. The Mets and the Phillies are both 8-16. They're 8 games under 500. We're still a week to go in April. So, yeah, runaway Braves. I hope some secured the 360 available preseason when we ran through some of those divisions.
Yeah, it feels like that market is just ignoring the Marlins and Nationals completely, right? They're thinking there's no way that those teams can win the division, so you're pricing the Braves against the Mets and Phillies, who they're 8.5 and 9.5 games ahead of respectively, and we're not even at the end of April. Just quickly on that theme team, was that about where you thought that team would end up in terms of a projected win total?
Yeah, I think we probably, Drake Baldwin is brilliant, year 1.2 seasons aside, was probably the weakest link in that team, right? Everyone else was pretty star-studded as far as both track record, what they've done in their career and where they are right now. I'm pretty sure the middle third of the alphabet, if you will, is going to be better than that. Just because we started off by saying, Ohtani, oh no, we can't put him in. He's 2 letters off. And Aaron Judge, no, he's 1 letter off. I think there's a good chance that middle section is going to be brilliant. And I'm a big chronological guy, but you have just planted the seed for me to maybe reverse that and maybe potentially save the best till last. Because I'm not sure how strong a team we're going to build from surnames beginning with X, Y, and Z. I might need to massage the parameters a little bit to make sure we can actually get there, because there's actually only 8 letters at the end of the alphabet, and 3 of them are probably going to be really difficult. We might need to be borrowing a letter, but stay tuned for Tuesday.
Or we might need to bring Robin Yount and Carl Yastrzemski and the Zimmermans back.
I mean,
into
Logan
the
Webb
equation.
will be our ace.
Yeah. See, look, no, that's cheating. Don't just erase it from your mind. I've done my best all week to not think about it. So whenever you do,
in and the fact Eric isn't here, I'm not too concerned about.
that's a fair point. Look, when we look ahead to the weekend schedule for Major League Baseball this weekend, you've got a couple of picks, oddly enough, in the Mets-Rockies series, which I'm interested to hear. But just quickly, the Padres and your D-backs playing in Mexico City this weekend, which will certainly be an interesting watch.
Yeah, so no humidor there in Mexico City. It's double the altitude of Coors, which is already known to be a very hitter-friendly ballpark. And in the 4 games they've played, I think they've had two-game series there in the past. It's been a combined 22 home runs hit. So it's going to be one of those interesting ones. I'm guessing they're going to put up a total of 11.5, and I'm probably going to want to take that. I know for the D-backs, the expected starters are Zach Gallen and Ryan Nelson. Both guys have really struggled to generate swing and miss this year. Ryan Nelson's last start with it was a yes hitter. He let 8 Blue Jays score in the first. And I don't think the Padres have exactly been dominating from a strikeout point of view with their starting pitching either. I'm assuming they're probably going to have Walker Buehler making one of the starts, because it was about Friday, Saturday last time he started. But yeah, I mean, 2 teams that are top 5 in contact rate, avoiding strikeout in a park where the ball flies off the bat. I'm probably going to be taking over whatever it is, but I think a more fun way to play it is going to be throwing together some total base same game multis. Like if you're getting anything close to $1.70, $1.80 for a Corbin Carroll, a Ketel Marte, a Manny Machado, or a Fernando Tatis for 2 or more total bases, I think you can throw a few of those in together and cheer for some offense. I think that's what we're going to be seeing.
I was in Mexico City. When was this? 2022. It was the final of an event. I think Major League Baseball is still running it. It was called Home Run Derby X. They've kind of changed the format of it. I think they do it in minor league ballparks now. Tyler Mahn's been the voice of it, friend of the podcast, and guest on the Baseball Expats last year. But they had a home run derby competition at Campo Marte in Mexico City, and I was commentating it. And like the dimensions were slightly smaller. I want to say probably more than slightly smaller than what a major league facility would be. And the players were all talking about it like in the lead up to that home run derby and during it is, yes, the ball was flying, but they talked about just the exhaustion that they felt like walking on stage because of the altitude, right? And I mean, I didn't realize, I probably should have known this, but like I traveled overnight, basically got there a day before the event and went for a run on the treadmill the day that I landed there and like couldn't work out why I was so out of breath. And then obviously looked at what the altitude was. So I wondered, like, does that play into any of that equation at all? Is just, yes, the ball's going to fly, but are we getting 100% of the output of the athlete in these two games, do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, how fast do you need to run when you hit it over the fence? I guess, like it's probably, is velo going to be down? It's the old, like, who's going to suffer more from conditions? You see it in wet games, cold games. Is it going to be the pitcher that's, struggling more than the hitter? I think it's going to be interesting. The score of the 4 games, for those interested. So in 2023, the Giants and the Padres played 2. First game was 16-11. And then the second game was 6-4. And then in 2024, the Astros and the Rockies went, and the Astros won both games 12-4 and 8-2. So that makes me feel pretty confident we're going to see 10.5 or 11.5. But if you look at, the Astros taking on the Rockies there, the 2024 Rockies were the worst baseball team in history. So, you've got the Astros putting up 12 and then 8, the Rockies putting up 4 and then 2. These are 2 very good offenses. Even when the D-backs lost 2 of 3 against the White Sox, I think they averaged 6 runs a game or something like that. They've been right up there all year. They do have speed. I don't know what they did in the other 2 series, whether they had the scheduled off day to start, but it seems like they're maybe taking that into account as far as preparation because, yeah, there's no game tomorrow, which is very unusual, to have Saturday here in Australia and not have a team playing to open a series. And the D-backs broadcast today mentioned that they're not going to take all their players over. So whether there's some guys that just aren't 100%, it's not going to aid their recovery or whatever it is if they're rehabbing something. It seems like they're not going to bring the whole team. So maybe there's been some learnings from those first 2 series to make those adjustments, but I guess we'll wait and see. We've got 18 innings over the weekend to see how well both teams are prepared.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And look, I love this international roadshow that Major League Baseball has started doing, obviously taking games to the UK as well. I mean, we got to see it here in Australia, what seems like a lifetime ago now, back in, I believe it was 2014 when that was the opening series between the D-backs and the Dodgers. I'm just looking back at the results at that Mexico City Home Run Derby X. Adrian Gonzalez had 25 home runs in the first round, and he got beat by Nick Swisher, who hit 28. It was a weird time, Home Run Derby X, but I really enjoyed it. He was a Red Sox farmhand at the time, Emmanuel Valdez. I believe he's with the Pirates system now. He hit 29 in the first round. Again, the dimensions weren't full baseball field, but it was probably about 80%, and the ball was just flying out of the ballpark. So it'll be interesting to see if the same happens in that D-backs Padres series this weekend. Let's have a look.
Sorry, there's just a funny comment here. On the Wednesday after the trip, Giants pitcher Logan Webb told reporters he thinks most of the Giants team returned from Mexico City with digestive ailments. So maybe get ready to fade the Padres and the D-backs in their early week series next week when they get back, depending on what kind of street meat tacos they consume.
It's the Mexican equivalent of Bali Belly, which you've endured at least once in the last couple of months. Well, let's look ahead to the weekend slates for the tips, and I teased it there at the top, but you're going Mets Rockies for your first tip. This is Eric levels of torture that you're going to put the listeners through. What have you got?
Yeah, look, I watched all three of the Mets games the last 3 days while they were, looking to break what was a 20-year loss streak of 12 games or something like that. And even in the nature they did it was not convincing at all. I think they won game one with a little bit of probably swagger, I guess you could say. And then they lost game one. They held on game two. Game one, McLean was throwing a perfect game after 5 innings, and then he gave up 3 runs to tie the game, and then they ended up losing in the ninth because Devin Williams walked 5 guys. He's got an ERA of nearly 10, by the way, which is not what you want for your big money closer. Then they win yesterday's games 3-2, and it was it was 2-2 after 7 innings, and the Mets got a little bit of momentum. They take that into today. Soto's back in the lineup, I think, is a huge talking point. He had some really weird comments, by the way, about how his whole time he was injured, he wasn't in contact with the team at all.
How strange was that? I know that I sent it to the group, but that's just so weird. He's like, no, I haven't had a chance to speak to him. It's like, what are you doing? You're doing nothing except rehabbing all day long, and you're not talking to your teammates? Like, that was really strange to me.
Yeah, and it's, like my biggest metric here as an analyst is the vibes metric, and that was not that did not pass the vibes test.
Well, and he also said they were on the road, but didn't they have a 3-game series like smack dab in the middle of that losing streak where they were at home?
Yeah, they haven't been on the road for 3 weeks. That's crazy.
it was very odd.
Blue Jays, Cody Ponce has been he did his ACL on the first start of the year, back 3 weeks ago. He's been at like every Jays game with his family. The vibes in Toronto are still fine despite where they're at, and that's why they haven't been declared dead yet on this podcast. But Soto back in the lineup today. They were kind of cruising in control for most of the game. They led 7-3. Then they gave up a game-tying grand slam in the 7th to go 7-7. And then they go up 9-7, I think, or 10-7. Would have been 10-7 with a Bo Bichette bases clearing double. And then Devin Williams again nearly blows it. The tying run was on second with 2 outs, but the Twins were unable to get it done. And ultimately, the Mets took a squeaky series win. That's a lot of context for why I like them against the Colorado Rockies, because I think an ugly win usually comes before a pretty win. And the Twins have actually been a really surprisingly good team this year. And I do think that taking 2 of 3 from that Twins team, they had to face Joe Ryan and another pretty solid starter from that Minnesota rotation. So, look, it wasn't pretty, but I think it's a little bit of a turn in momentum. And now they get a Rockies team coming in that overperformed a bit to start the year, and now we're kind of seeing where they're at. I don't love the line alone for Fastball Freddy, because you need to take over 7.5 to get plus money, and the Mets are $1.40. So the way I want to play this is Freddie Peralta 6 or more strikeouts and the Mets to win at $1.83. It's not a sexy price. You're certainly not getting rich, but I think a lot has to go wrong for that to miss. And I think a lot could have gone wrong the last 3 days, and it didn't. The Mets managed to scrape out a series win. It wouldn't surprise me at all if the Mets now go and sweep the Rockies. And all of a sudden we're talking about, what was and not what is. And they certainly wouldn't be the first team to have a horrible start to the season and get things figured out later on, especially when you look at the payroll. If Bichette's now having his big moments, Juan Soto's back in the lineup, Lindor's found a couple of home runs in the last 3 days, Freddie Peralta's there, their big money ace, I think $1.83. It's about a bet that should be $1.50, and it's not sexy, like I said, but it's value.
Well, and yeah, I mean, we can all agree that the Mets should be beating the Rockies, but we talked about it before we came on air. The Rockies actually have a better record than the Mets do at the moment, only by a game. But I mean, who would have picked that at the end of April, right? The Mets are sitting still trying to find their 10th win of the season. And look, I think not that you would look too far into it, because you would think on any given day the Mets probably should beat the Rockies, but the fact that Michael Lorenzen's going against Fastball Freddy tomorrow, I think probably only boosts your confidence, because Lorenzen's not been great this year.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, where the Mets have fallen short, obviously they've gone on those long streaks of drought as far as offense, but their starters often haven't gone deep into starts. And part of that is, you've got effectively a rookie in McLean who they're very cautious with. You've got a converted reliever in Holmes who is never going to go too far into his starts either. David Peterson's been moved to the bullpen because that experiment's kind of failed. This to me is a clear time where they need 7 innings of Freddie Peralta, and they'll give him every opportunity to get through that, so that they're only leaning on a pretty poor bullpen for a couple of innings. And if you're getting 7 innings from Freddie Peralta guaranteed tomorrow, you can almost lock in 6 strikeouts against one of baseball's highest strikeout teams. And if he's in there for 7 innings, the Mets should be winning, assuming they can add a couple of runs off Lorenzen.
So the first tip for Saturday here in Australia, the Friday games in the U.S. Fastball Freddy, 6 or more strikeouts, and the Mets to beat the Rockies. We're going to Pirates Brewers, an El Central battle for your second tip.
Yeah, look, this is a guy I have placed trust in preseason and a guy I've placed trust in recently and haven't quite got the results yet. Brandon Woodruff is the name of that starter. He's actually getting a lot of respect tomorrow from the books, and his line is 6.5 over for even money, which I thought was a little bit higher than I would have liked. I understand the Pirates are swinging and missing a lot lately. Jacob deGrom struck out 10 effortlessly in the series finale between the Rangers and the Pirates today. I'm still not sure I can take over 6.5 for Woodruff alone. So what I thought was quite an interesting way to play was Paul Skeens 6 or more and Brandon Woodruff 6 or more at $2.05. I think of all the slates over the weekend, we've got basically 15 teams or 30 teams playing 3 games each. This is the one I'm most excited about because it's Skeens who started poorly, and he's been very good recently and he's on the up. And Woodruff has kind of started fine, but given he took that year off, and we covered him extensively preseason when we were talking futures, the signs are getting a lot better for him as far as how much the organization's trusting him and his pitch count. And his most recent start against the Fish, he only allowed 1 earned run. He went 7 innings and he threw 92 pitches. So for me, that's perfectly primed for a guy to be able to get that 6 mark against a Pirates team who would strike out 5 or 6 times against most starters, regardless of the stuff. But Brandon Woodruff's a guy who I really like the stuff, and he's looked like he's getting better and better. The ERA is down to 3.42. Pitch count above 92 of the last 3 starts. They're trusting him. He's trusting himself. So I'm going to play that way, 6 each at $2.05, and then a little bit on both guys to get 8 at $7.50 in case it turns into the pitching duel. I think it could. I'd like a little bit of something on the top up that way.
The market may not be out yet, and we talked about this last week, but if you're going to take each guy to get 8, would you not rather take to combine for 16 or more idea? You just don't feel like you'd get a very good price?
I think given both guys' line is 6.5, you're going to be looking at 14 probably to get $2.10 is basically how they're doing it. They're usually adding 1 and a bit as far as their kind of pricing. So then to get 16, you're probably looking at $4.50 because it seems to scale about 70, 80 cents per strikeout. So yeah, I mean, I might end up, half of my stake on that 16 plus and half on the 750. But I think to get 16, really, both guys probably need to get 8. Like it's one of those ones where, yeah, you might get a 9 and a 7 or a 10 and a 6, but the straightest path to victory is probably 8 each, and you're getting 750 about something instead of 450.
So just to recap those, Mets Rockies tomorrow, Spoon Lakes, fastball Freddy to strike out 6 or more, and the Mets to win, and then in that Brewers Pirates game, good pitching matchup, Brandon Woodruff and Paul Skeens, each to get 6 or more, and then maybe a little top up with each to get 8 or more at a lot better price. There's a lot of good games, a lot of good series this weekend. Just quietly, the Cubs on their 9-game win streak have catapulted themselves to the top of the NL Central. They're out west to play the Dodgers this weekend, which will be a great series. Not a great pitching matchup on the Friday night. Jameson Taillon and Emmett Sheehan, but I haven't looked at what the pitching matchups are for the rest of the weekend. But I'm really interested to see how the Cardinals go against the Mariners at home. It's kind of an interesting matchup for St. Louis, and obviously 2 teams that don't play each other very much. But I think it'll be a good litmus test to see where the Cardinals actually are, because they've kind of yo-yoed a little bit this last week. So really interested to see how the Birds go against the Mariners this weekend.
You follow them and watch them more than I do, obviously, but I did see a lot of the Cardinals-Marlins games this week. I've never seen a St. Louis lineup swinging and missing that much. Like, it wasn't just Mason Wynn, who's kind of never seen a pitch he doesn't like, but it was up and down the whole way. which I thought was really interesting. You might have a game like that, but it's rare you have a series like that, which ultimately belies what the season long trend has kind of been. I'm not sure whether there was just an approach there against the Fish to try and swing early, swing often. I'm sure Dalton Rushing's listening there somewhere and maybe trying to avoid the pun of that being fishy against the Fish. But yeah, I thought that was quite an interesting one, and that does make it they haven't put the lineup yet, but I'm curious what George Kirby's strikeout line will be against the Cards tomorrow, based on just how the last 3 games have gone. This is a good strikeout prevention team on the whole, but the last 3 days looked like a really different approach.
Yeah, and it was disheartening because you thought, we're going to Miami and we don't have to face Sandy Alcantara. We don't have to face Yuri Perez. So it was like, okay, we can go down there and win 2 of 3. I mean, they won the middle game. We're able to get out of Miami with a victory before heading back home. But it was just a bit of a weird series. It was disheartening. And I don't know, sometimes you can go down to Miami and play in front of 17 people. And to quote you, the vibes are just off. You know what I mean? It just feels like, what are we doing here? Let's get the hell out of Miami. So I hope there's a little bit of that. I think they'll probably be good crowds in St. Louis this weekend. I think they're expecting good weather. And a team like the Mariners that, fans in St. Louis wouldn't get to see an awful lot. So I think if the crowds are good, hopefully the vibes are back. And I'll be interested to see how the Cardinals go this weekend. Just quickly on Cubs-Dodgers. I know that you loathe watching a lot of Dodger baseball, but that's probably one that I'll have my eye on this weekend as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Shota versus Glasnow in the Monday game here in Australia, the final game of that series, which I think is going to be a super game. I took Shota unders on the Tuesday episode because of the theory that he's playing a team twice in back-to-back starts, and that ended up being a little masterstroke because his line was 6.5 and he had 1 strikeout. Now I'm hoping it's gone the other way and it's yo-yoed and we can get a 5.5 plus money over about Shota, because I think he's going to be in a really good spot to bounce back in a strikeout sense. He didn't give up. I think he gave up a couple of runs against the Phillies. But I think he's going to be locked in, ready to go for that one. So, yeah, keep an eye out for that one. I'm just trying to see who's slated to go in the middle game, the Sunday here in Australia.
Our man, Roki Sasaki. Take him on. I dare you. I dare you.
Okay, I might take him on at least in a strikeout sense, because the Cubs have been pretty good strikeout preventers, and Roki just can't get it going in that sense. I think he struck out 3 Rockies in his last start, which is well below par for any start against the Rockies. Who's going for the Cubs then in that middle game?
Colin Ray.
Okay. I mean, this series screams 2-1 Dodgers, right? But yeah, I'm interested. I mean, anytime you got a team coming in on a 9-game win streak, and they were last in the division when we spoke, I think 2 or 3 episodes ago, and now it's like, okay, well, kind of declared them. We previewed 6 divisions before the season started, and apart from the Dodgers, the sure money thing, from my perspective at least, was the Cubs to win the Central. After the first 3 weeks of the season, it was like, and now they're 3 or 4 games clear of the Brewers. They're 7 games above 500, and it's like, whew, okay, because I was really keen on Cubs and Braves at $8 to both win their divisions. Now all of a sudden, you're probably getting $250 about that double. So yeah, let's see if the Cubs can go on the road, Dodger Stadium, take 2 of 3. You'd be feeling really good about where they're at for the Central.
Definitely a fun weekend of baseball ahead. And don't forget, you can head over to baseballexpats.com. Content there. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends about the podcast, because it really does help us grow. But until we see you next week, enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the baseball. Bye, everybody.